Morning everybody. So as promised, I'm going to bring you a video of this little card that we made earlier. So usually I use Atlantic, but this time we're going to be using, I think it's a bit of lavender. It's just a bit sort of softer in the background there. So what I've done, I've started by masking out the very edges of the card here with a little bit of the Scotch removable. And then I've already started to add on a little bit of the lavender just around these edges here. So we can add a little bit more now. So just little circular motions. And if you've got a new ink pad especially, just make sure that you sort of get some of that ink off before you take it onto your card. So we've done the same at the bottom here with the bamboo ink as well. Just to give us a little bit of background colour before we start building up the actual scene of the card. So I'm just going to pop that in front of me there so I don't forget, because I've got such a terrible memory of what we're going to be adding on here. So what I'm going to do is first to start building up this little background here. So we've got two pieces, two halves of the same piece of paper that we've just torn down the middle. And I've used a little bit of Scotch removable on the back of it here, just to help it stick while we sort of do our colouring, so it's not going to keep sort of coming away. And then we're going to start with our first little hill. So I'm going to take it about there. And really, it doesn't matter where you take this, it's entirely up to you. It depends how much sky you sort of want on view there. And then all we're going to do is very, very gently get rid of some of this. We want the ones in the distance to be a little bit paler. So I'm just going to do very, very pale hills or mountains in the background there like that. And remember, a lot of our detail is going in this corner, so you don't want anything too heavy on this left-hand side of the card. That'll probably just about do us, because we just want to be able to see that lovely faintness there in the background. And then I'm going to sort of move it slightly so we don't get all the same sort of patterns here. And we're going to go about there. And this time, just a little bit heavier. So just a little bit more colour. And again, just be aware of that left-hand side where you're going to have those flowers coming out. So you don't want too much colour in that, on that side. Okay, so let's peel that off. And there's your second one. So let's just do another one. Just about there, and we'll vary that angle slightly as well. So let's just see where we are, about there. And then we'll just do the same thing again. Now you could use two different pieces of paper as well, which will give you sort of a different look. So you've not got the same hill just repeated. Okay, so there are our little hills in the background, like that. And then what we're going to do is just give those a little blend together like that. Okay. Now the bottom half here, what we're going to do is use another piece of paper to do our green hills. And again, we've just taken this from two pieces in case you want to mask out one of the other sides. So I'm going to go with, say, this one here. I'm going to start from just below where the purple is there. And we're just going to add a little bit of bamboo on here. So just move your finger to a nice clean bit of your baby white there. And we're just going to start to add these little details. Now the other half of the paper is quite important, because when you want to do your little grasses and things, you're going to want to mask out this hill. So having the matching side to the paper can be quite important. And you'll see what I mean later on anyway. Okay, so let's take that first one off there. And then we're just going to do another one. I mean, it's up to you how many of these you do. Just leave yourself some room to put some of those little grasses or flowers or things just poking out over those hills. So as we get closer to us, we want to make this just a little bit darker. So I'm going to go about there, and we're going to add a little bit more shade. And remember, we've already got some of that green there, so there's not a lot of colouring really that you need to do. Okay, and then we've built up our background. So the other side of this green hill, now what we need to do is mask this out if you want to be putting any grasses and things on here. So we can take our little piece of paper and you can pretty much line that up there like that. So this is the other side to the piece of paper that we had. So let's get some little greens on here. And we're just going to go just over the edge like that. Remember, just take them up a little bit if you want to make that grass just look a little bit taller there like that. And then into that we can add some other little bits and pieces as well. So I'm going to take some of my little texture set, and we're going to add in some little bits of colour with this. So I'm going to go back to Peony, I think, with this one, and Atlantic. So we're going to use a little bit of Atlantic on the blue on the flowers here, and then we're just going to stamp those just over the top like that. And then the same with these little ones here. So these are all out of the little textures set, and it just builds up this gorgeous little sort of grassy areas here. So we can move this up, and let's just see if we can line that back up there. That's around there. And again, this doesn't have to be exact, so don't worry too much about this, but it's just nice if you've got the other piece just to sort of roughly mask that off. Okay, so again, I'm going to use a few little flowers in here. Let's use a few of the little pink, the smaller ones here. Just sort of add those into those hills there like that. And then if you want to, you could even add some of the little leaves and things around there. It's entirely up to you, but we might just do that at the end to add a little bit more detail around the back. So I'm going to go back to my little mountains here. So these are the ones that we used to do the little mountains. So this side here should match out these ones. So can you see we can sort of line that up there, and we can sort of use our little trees now. So I'm going to go with the lavender. Now this is not the same as the other one, but I just thought adding a few little trees in the background would be quite nice. Sorry, that is lilac, not lavender. So we're going to add a little bit of lavender over the top of that. And then let's just do some little trees just in that background. So slightly different to what we've done, but I think this works really nicely to have these little trees just poking through here in the background like that. And again, just let the ink run out on the stamp so you get a really soft sort of look there in the distance. And then let's maybe put one just on this little hill here. So we'll sort of have this one sticking up in the background. And then we can use some of the other grasses and foliage just to add a little bit more detail. Let's put that one about there. Why not? And then what we'll do is add a little bit of detail, I think, and we'll use maybe the tips of the grasses, but we'll keep it all to sort of the blue colour. So we're going to go back to the lavender. So it's got a lavender tinge, and we're just going to add, I only want the tiniest little bits just coming through there like that. So you just got a little bit of detail. And that's pretty much your background sorted out. I'm going to put a few clouds in now as well for the sky. So we're going to use our Snowy Skies collection. And I'm just going to add a little bit of colour. Now, it's important with these, you want the clouds to look quite watercoloury. So what I always do is take a little bit of that colour off first. And then we can just stamp those in that background so they're nice and soft. And then I'm going to do the same with the small one. And remember, at the moment, all we're doing is creating our little background for our design. So just lovely and soft and wispy in that background is what we're looking for. And I think every card that you make is always different, and can be a really good thing. And it also leads to sort of new ideas as well, which is lovely. So there's our little background already done. So now what we need to do is add in our final bits of detail here. So we need to work on this little flower arrangement here. So leave your card stuck down to your paper. I'm going to add a little bit more green in this corner. So it's easier just to leave it in place rather than to keep peeling it on and off your card. So you don't disturb any of that tape. Get rid of some of the excess here. And then we're just going to build up a little bit more green in this corner here. Now we might even add a little bit of the barbed wire in here as well when we've finished. But it's lovely because when you've made one, you always want to sort of experiment and put new bits and pieces in as well. Okay, so let's whiz that around now like that. And then we can start to add in our little details. So I think I'm going to start with our little leaf here. This is our wisteria leaf. And this is the bigger one in the set. And we're just going to start filling in this space here. And remember, don't re-ink every single time. Let the ink run out on the stamp. And just take it as far as you want. Entirely up to you. We've taken ours mostly to the top on that other card. So I'm going to just let that fade like that. Remember, we're going to fill this all in with the little flowers. So we're going to be using the wisteria the other way around. So it looks like a different flower. Sort of almost foxglove-like. And just keep filling in this little gap here at the back. And remember, we've got this lovely white border, so you can add as much detail to these edges as you like. Okay, so let's get our little flowers in now. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to use our wisteria the other way around. So I'm just going to take the two of the wisteria. There's a lot of wisteria in the set, but I tend to use a lot of these similar colours here. So I'm going to start with the big one. So I'm going to do this in Atlantic. And then I think I'm going to add a little bit of peony to this one. So don't be frightened of adding two colours onto your stamp as well, but just make sure that when you do, you always use your palest colour first, and then you're not likely to dirty that ink. So just a little bit more blue, and a little bit of peony, and then we can add in those flowers there like that. And again, just sort of fill in with the bits of ink that are left on the stamp, and just keep repeating this until you're happy with it. A little bit of peony. So the darker colour on this stamp actually just brings out a lot of that detail, because if you actually look at the stamp, it's got such beautiful detail in there. And the dark colour just seems to bring out that lovely colourway, that lovely detail, sorry. So a little bit more blue, a little bit more pink, and then we're just going to add this into those spaces like that. So we've got a smaller leaf in the little set as well, so we're just going to use the smaller wisteria leaf, and we're going to add in some smaller details just here like this. And into those little gaps as well, if you feel like you've got some spaces there, just off stamp it first so it's not quite so dark, and you can fill in the backgrounds here. Obviously it helps because we've already put some green in that background as well. And we can't have a card really without adding one of my all-time favourites, which is the Oriental Blossom. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put a couple more of the wisteria, I think, but we're going to use the smaller one. And I'm going to do these slightly darker so they stand out. So we might just add just peony instead of any other colour, just to give us a bit of a darker colourway just coming through. So let's go about there. Maybe there. So anywhere where you feel like there's a little space where you could do it with a little bit of colour. And that'll probably just do it. So you see I'm using up whatever colour we've got left on that as well, just to fill in those little spaces. Now, Oriental Blossom, what I'm going to do with this, we're just going to take some of the very tips of this, and we're just going to sort of add these in here and there. So don't worry too much where these go, because they're just going to look like they're poking out of those little flowers at the bottom here. So just pop these little bits in. And just vary the angle slightly as well, so it's not all going to be the same angle. And don't worry if you get the hole. I've deliberately sort of inked up the whole bit there because we want a little bit more of that darkness coming through, because it just seems to pull out all those lovely colours like that. And then on this top right hand corner here, we're going to have some little ones just hanging down over the top, just really to sort of frame the card like that. So let's take this down a little bit like that. The Oriental Blossom is probably one of my most used stamps. I absolutely adore it. Okay, so we've got our little bees to put in. Now I'm going to add an extra little bee in here. So these are from the Bees and Blossoms collection, or Blossom and Bees I think it's called, sorry. I'm going to add these little bees just into the picture there. And then we've also got this little one as well, which is in the same set. So I'm going to pop this one just about there to give us a little bit of interest on the bottom there. And then we can just use a coloured pencil, whatever you've got. Felt tip, whatever it is, just to give a little bit of yellow to those little bees there like that. Okay, so at the moment it's going to look a little bit messy because obviously we've got a lot of the ink around the edges here, so I'm going to add a little bit of this sort of fencing here just across the edge here like this. Very, very delicate, a very delicate stamp. Now we didn't have this on the other card, but like I say, as you sort of make them, you always end up adding in little bits and pieces here and there like that. Okay, so we're nearly at the end now, so what we're going to do is just blend some of these edges. So I'm going to take off some of this excess ink like that and get rid of it, and then whatever's left we're just going to sort of darken those edges. And it's at this point now, if you want to add anything extra to the edges, that you can. So let's just soften that off a little bit first. I always find the darker the edges are, the nicer it looks when this tape comes off. Now, if you've got a white pen, you can actually add a little bit of highlight to this. So you could have it so you've got a little bit of light just coming through. Now, this is not very dark, this image, so you're not really going to see a lot of this. But if you want to draw attention to any little areas here, and it sort of separates your stamp, so especially where you've got your little bits of barbed wire just running through there like that, you can add these little bits of white to it. So it just sort of separates and sort of gives you that layered look to your stamping as well. So you could add a few little bits to your little flowers like that. But like I said, this is the sort of pen that's going to show up where you've got those darkest backgrounds. So we're nearly there at the end now. So what I'm going to do is peel off some of this design here. But first, we're just going to add a little bit more detail just around the edges here. I might even put a little bit of green. So the little leaf cluster that's included in the texture set is fabulous if you want to add a little bit of extra detail around the edges here like that. It's just one of those sets I would not be without now. So just make sure you vary the angle each time you stamp it, so you've not got all the leaves sort of going in the same direction. I'm just going to put a little bit of a cluster just down here. So you could use this to make little bushes as well if you wanted to. But let's just take a few little bits of leaves just around the outside there. So what we're going to do now is peel off these edges. So let's take all of this away. Like so. So this is why I like it lovely and dark around the edge, because you do get this beautiful sort of crisp white border, so it saves you having to mat and layer a lot of things as well. So I've finished it by adding a little bit of glitter to this. So previously I was using these stickles because I couldn't find my glitter. Now ironically enough, I can't find my glue pen. Just give me 1 second. Right, here we go. So let's add a little bit of sparkle to this. I'm just going to add in a little bit of glitter like that. I'm going to put a little bit up there as well. And we're also going to put a little bit of glue on these little bees' wings here as well, so we can get a lovely bit of sparkle onto them. And what is nice is you could do little sort of trails here as well. Do you want a little bit of a trail there for your bee? And I'm just going to add in a few little berries using the lavender lace. Liquid pearls here, so we can pull out some of these little branches as well. Again, it's just adding these little tiny details here and there that just make everything pop. So again, we're not going to do too many of these, so I don't want to bore you. But just so you've got a little bit of added detail in the background there. So let's go to our good old glamour dust, and then what we're going to do is sprinkle a little bit of this over the top like that, and just into that top corner there. I'm just going to give this a tap off to the side like that. Okay, and there we have it. So there's our finished card alongside our other cards. So you see, you never really get two the same, but I don't really think that matters. Anyway, thank you for watching. Thanks a lot. See you soon. Bye.